Good afternoon. We're coming to you from the Genpact offices in New York City, and I'd like to introduce Monty Singh. He is our business leader and Senior Vice President of IT and Capital Markets. Thanks for spending this time with us, Monty.
Thank you, Jill.
As you are from GE, we would like to hear about your career.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Look, I think I'll start somewhere in the middle, otherwise go too much back in history. I was the quality leader for GE Capital Vendor Financial Services in 2003 and 2005. And in 2005, when Genpact got formed, I left GE Capital and I joined Genpact. And my first job was literally go figure it out, what do you want to do? And the role that I took on was Six Sigma, solutioning, and transitions, which was really going to customers and understanding what they wanted to offshore and ship work out. I did that for 2 years, and frankly, I got bored. So I decided to change my role and went to my boss, who was the CEO of Genpact, saying, give me something more. And he gave me relationship management. And that is when the fun started for me. My whole role was actually growing to customers and growing their business, interacting with them, sitting with them, ideating with them. And then I realized in those years that what did GE build in me? And it's amazing what GE Capital does to you when you build your career there. You're highly outstanding, you're incredibly detailed, you're incredibly granular, most important, you're better than the most that exist in this industry. And I think that is the biggest thing that the customers felt, and I enjoyed that role. And then after about 2-3 years, I got bored again. And then I went to my boss and said, hey, give me a better role. And he made me the sales leader of the company, which was really cool because that's when I spent a lot of time with customers, sat down with them, understood their problems, and I think that was an amazing journey. During that time, he said, you got to go and build something new. Try something, build a consulting business for me. And then, I went out, hired a few people. In fact, we hired 2 people from GE Capital, Bala and Ajay Kapoor, and they came over and we started a consulting business. It was $0, and it's $220 million today, and it's, I think, the most highly differentiated business that we have, and which is growing a lot. And post that, 2.5 years ago, I took over the current role of mine, which I run all the technology businesses of Genpact and also the capital markets vertical. So really interesting journey. Fantastic.
That's a lot of roles.
Right.
That's very fascinating.
Yeah.
Tell us why you think Genpact's a great place to work.
Oh boy, I could speak for 10 minutes on that, but I think a few things that I think are very, very, very critical to understand. One, it's a hyper-growth company in a growth industry. I think we are blessed to be in that space. Growth is a wonderful thing. It allows you to do so many things, and I think Genpact is at the cusp and the middle of what I call a multi-decade growth trend. It's not this year, it's not next year, so it's for years to come, and I think that's really fantastic. I do think that it's got a very unique culture based on from where we grew up, which is GE Capital. It's highly unique, it's highly differentiated, and you feel that difference when you leave GE Capital and actually go out and see what's out there in the world. It's highly differentiated, very unique. I think the other thing that is cool about Genpact, that Genpact is cool. It's a fun place. People have fun here. It's not too mature, it's not too immature. I think it's the right balance between maturity and immaturity, and that's how I think great workplaces are. It's a very open environment, it's a very friendly environment, and I think that's really, really important. Certain other things that I think Genpact is great, it's just the best way I could think about it is mobility and flexibility. Mobility of jobs. I just told you mine. I've done 4 roles or 5 roles in 8 years.
And that's not an uncommon story.
And that's not an uncommon story. So I think that's it's just it gives you that ability to change and do things, which I think a lot of people like, and I think that's another really good thing about Genpact. And flexibility is linked to mobility, but I think it's flexibility on multiple dimensions. Type of role, where do you want to work from? How many hours do you want to work? Who do you want to work with? Which groups do you want to engage with? I think that's highly unique. Very few firms offer that kind of flexibility. And I think the last, like I said, I could go on, but a very important point is extreme learning. I think we are in a place where there's so many opportunities to learn and develop oneself that it's truly amazing. So I think some of those things are really exciting.
Well, you're touching on what an interesting culture
Yeah.
Genpact has. Would you explain a little bit more than that, and also explain the empowerment that is here, that this isn't unlike any company I've seen before?
Yeah, I think, I carry on trying to understand, and everybody tells me that we are a very unique culture. People who join us, people in the industry, that you're really unique. And I've always thought about it, why we are unique. And here's the reason why I think we're extremely unique. I think there is no company in the world that has been built on the base of one of the best management companies in the world, GE. So we have such a big and strong base of a company of GE. What do I mean by that? People practices. How do you deal with people globally? How do you train people? Compliance and risk policies. How do you grow globally? And that's a very solid base. There is no company in our industry that has that base. And that's been built over years from GE. But overnight in 2005, we became small. And therefore, which meant that we became faster, agile, nimble. So think about an eclectic combination of a strong base, but extremely fast. And when you have that kind of culture, it fosters speed, it fosters empowerment, because nobody has the time. You're in a hyper-growth industry. It is less political. You just don't have time. It is a culture of energy. It's a culture of diversity. It's a culture of speed. And I think speed, energy in a growth industry builds a culture of collaboration. It builds a culture of empowerment. So, the way we see it is, look, I think ideas are not born centrally. Ideas are born collectively. And when teams come up with ideas, we take the risk and say, go build something new. It's the example that I took of re-engineering. Boss told me, and I said, oh, let me go try something out. Seriously, it was just 2 or 3 people. We sat down and said, what to do? It's a $250 million business today. So we have a lot of those things going on, and I think that is hugely unique to the people that I'm talking to, because it's exactly who I was. And today, it's amazing how I'm seen in the context of other leaders in the industry. It's uniquely different, and how I treat people, how do I coach people, and I think when you think about the role, you should think about which company has. The one way I could think about it is we are the largest startup in the world with the biggest base of a GE culture. No one has it. Just no one can have it, to be honest.
It also does sound like you're talking about there being a lot of trust. Once people are socialized and well networked inside of the relationship culture of Genpact.
Yeah, I think it's, I always think, why is it that we are open-minded and we empower and we work with each other? I think it's just the nature of the industry. Our industry is really sitting in front of customers and solving customer problems and customer needs. Guess what? No one person has all the ideas. So it forces you to reach out internally and externally to pull multiple brains to solve a customer need. It's a great example of empowerment. We were thinking in 2007, and how do you do this? And we asked a couple of people, hey, think about how do we drive collaboration. And they worked with Procter & Gamble and came up with an idea that, look, every time we have to have a discussion with a customer, we must get an external view. Mm-hmm. So today, if you're having a discussion, let's say with Boeing and how do planes fly, we might get an ex-Boeing person to think around how to make them fly longer. And I just think it has grown and it's grown and it's grown, and I think people have got very comfortable with it, and I think it's one of our competitive advantages. Collaboration is a hugely competitive advantage. I also do think Genpact has built, it doesn't have bureaucratic systems and structures of large organizations that facilitate silo behavior. I'll tell you a joke, this is true, but our first customer after he broke away was Wells. And the person from Wells told me, he says, you may be the largest organization with no organization structure. But the way, he really meant it in a nice way, that you guys seem to work so well with each other. You obviously have a structure, but there's no hierarchy, there's no sirs here, there's no You just walk into people's offices and think of ideas. I think that's really cool. It really
It's
is.
invigorating.
Yeah, it really is.
Can you give examples of careers that you've seen for people that have come from GE? Because I know we've hired
Yeah.
many.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of examples, but if I could, just rattle off examples, but I think sales. The beauty about our industry is operations and technology is the front end for us. So people who are deep in operations and deep in technology make the best salespeople in our industry. And it's, so I always see people who can come in from G Capital and come into our industry and become very strong in sales. Anu Sasteva is a client partner for GE, and she is a client partner for 4 or 5 clients. She's doing outstandingly well. And guess what? She was never a salesperson in her life. Never. She was great in operations. She ran a risk book, and now she's the best salesperson. Why? Because it's highly differentiated depth that she brings along.
She sounds like a consultant who comes with that SME depth.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Build
She
your
helps
risk.
them- She helps them find out what they need.
And what they need. Build your risk is another example. Come out from GE, great in sales. Absolutely. And he's never done sales
And he
before.
didn't sell before.
No.
Amazing.
So the beauty is that sometimes I say people in GE don't realize how good they are.
Yeah.
Because you've never been outside GE. And my only promise to you is that you'll figure that out is when you are expose your skills to the world. It's just unbelievable. So I think sales is a great example. The other area is consulting. G Capital people bring so much of depth and knowledge. And it's amazing. If you just share that depth and knowledge, then so many people wanted to listen to you. It's amazing. You'll feel so happy that you can go and solve customers' problems. So I clearly see people coming into the re-engineering team from GE, whether it's operations of GE, whether it's Six Sigma of GE, whether it's technology of GE, and working in consulting. But consulting on what? Working in consulting, let's say with KeyBank or banks like Wells, and say, hey, I got a problem in booking and funding. But you've done booking and funding in GE for years. You can go and change the processes. And you can tie in with external breathing and get people from the cloud and say, what's happening in booking and funding? Think about it. It's like molding a new toy. It's not you're just doing daily work. Here you're saying, okay, now how do I go and advise this person to improve a booking and funding process? It's your job. And therefore, imagine you're going to learn so much. You're going to go and copy from the outside, you're going to learn from the outside, and go and give a point of view. And I think people who have come from G Capital have that depth, have that discipline, which our customers just love. It's so highly differentiated. It's really cool. Another role could be just developing products and practices. There's so many new things happening in the digital space across so many lines: commercial lending, commercial loans, retail bank, wealth management. You can get in that. How are those processes, or how are those functions, or how are those businesses going to develop? How do I build a practice that in wealth management, all the customers? Well, how's the millennials going to invest in the future? It's the question out there. We're putting 5 or 6 people. Go think about it. Because the millennials are not going to invest the way I did, for sure.
Yeah.
They don't even think about it the way I do. And how do we solve that problem? Completely different. So it's exciting problems like that that you can do. I can go on and on and on and on and on, but if you look at these 3 jobs, I think in these 3 roles, what's really happening is unearthing the hidden talent and depth of people from G Capital. I myself am an example. It took me 2 years, maybe it took me a year to realize I was best out when I was taking what I learned in GE and talking to so many customers. Actually, I was quite surprised. Every time I used to say something, customers used to start taking notes initially and saying, what did I say? And they were like, wow, I've never heard this before. And I said, in G Capital, I did it every day. So it's that thing that I think you can really add value, and it's fun.
Well, I've been recruiting from GE Capital for about 12 years now, and I think you're also talking about the fact that when you work in GE Capital, you're used to excellent systems.
Right.
And you don't realize until you go and become a customer-facing consultant
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
that they don't take it for granted. They don't know this, so these people can thrive here.
Yeah, absolutely. No question around that.
And what can Genpact do for the high-performing GE Capital alumni that could come here?
Yeah, I think a lot. I think in terms of building careers, like I said, I think the word that comes to my mind is multiple. Multiple types of jobs that one could take, whether it's sales, re-engineering, or consulting. Multiple dimensions of accounts that could be given to people. I've seen people grow from one account to two account to three accounts. It's just absolutely amazing. In fact, the funny thing is, this is not directly from G Capital, but there's a person whom we brought in from deep collections operations, who was not a confident person to be in front of a customer. He's the highest selling person in Genpact today. That is just amazing. By the way, his name is also Monty, so, but it's not me. it's really. So I really do think, in terms of career paths, in terms of options to do, there are a lot to do. But we have what we do is a 100-day induction program, which we really get them to understand how does Genpact really work. Because there is a difference between GCAP and Genpact. To what I alluded to earlier, we are smaller, we are faster, we are quicker. And how do you collaborate? Who do you work with? We are not a structured organization that comes in and say you move from point A to point B and you get an A+.
Yes.
We throw curveballs at you. You make relationships and friends of people. And I think that's an important ingredient. Obviously, we help you architect that. You typical G, we have a 100-day plan, we have an integration plan, we have a checklist, we do all that kind of stuff. But, it's amazing. This is the feedback that I've always got from people who've joined Genpact, from G Capital and from outside. What a friendly place. Everybody's trying to help you. And I think that's a very flattering statement for people like us who have been here from day one.
Yes.
And I think it just gives you a lot of satisfaction. I think it's really cool.
Well, also, what I've seen is new people, when they come up with extraordinary accomplishments early in the game, it's high profile. It will move up the chain.
Yeah, you all are familiar with the session C process and all that kind of stuff. The question we ask, which I think is different from what I asked when I was in GE, what will it take to make this person successful? It's the question that is asked for every person, and that's kind of cool. And
it's a concentration more than other good companies. There is more of a concentration on it here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But there's a selfish reason, because remember, we are in the business of just people. Employees and customers, that's all that they are. And it's not a box. It's hearts, it's humans, it's people. And I think, at least for me, it's very important to look at from the eyes of the employee and the human, that am I or we as an organization helping that person grow. And I think that's a very important ingredient that we have realized, because that's when we'll have a motivated sales force. We have to have a very highly motivated sales force. We're in a hyper-growth industry. The opportunities are so much. So, and I always think about it, and today's world is very different from 10 years ago. You can't retain an employee just by how we...
Just with a program.
You can't do it with a program. It's heart, it's emotion, it's so many things come into play. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a very important characteristic about us.
And could you address the learning curve and the challenges of the learning curve, both in your first 100 days and to accomplish things in your first few years at Genpact?
So I think, like I said, I think a couple of things. Obviously, the speed of work is really intense here. We're in a hyper-growth industry. So if you think of that environment, and you're dealing with people and humans, I really think a couple of things that come out clearly. One is quick learning. Curiosity and learning is a great thing. And I think in our industry, if you don't have it, you're hurting yourself. I mean, the opportunity to learn is just incredible. And I think getting your head around that I literally have to learn every day. It's like table stakes here. So it's asking questions and getting onto the web and getting on the people. So that mindset is very, very important. I think I always tell people that come in, it's really important. Second is making friends. Understand who can help you and who can't help you. Obviously, like typical GB, there'll be a typical G Capital. We will have a process which is a buddy, a mentor, a coach. All those things will be given. But if you don't have the DNA to reach out to people, I think I've just seen that it's really important. 3, be shameless for asking for help.
This is the only company
Yeah.
I've ever seen that validates being shameless and asking for help.
Yeah, you should be shameless, and there's no
wrong way.
There's no wrong way here. There's no rules around asking around here. No, there's walk in. I mean, there's no sirs, there's no captains, there's no seniority kind of thing. There is obviously organization gets run, but the atmosphere is very approachable. If you don't take advantage of it, it'll be great. It's very important that you do that. Remember, we are a company which really doesn't have any headquarters. We're global. People work from home. So if you don't reach out,
Yes.
you can
Isolate very
get
easily.
get isolated yourself. You know, people work from home. Most of our salespeople work from home.
Yes.
All our engineering and consulting people work from home.
Yes.
Many of our
When they're
practice
not on
people-
the client side.
When they're not
Yes.
on the client sites.
Yes.
And I think that's very important, that you must stay connected, send emails out, make buddies,
proactive.
reach out, be proactive, and you'll be surprised at how people will help you. It's just
So
amazing.
speaking about one of the points that you brought up, can you explain a little bit about the difference between a company that simply has worldwide offices and a company like Genpact that actually works globally?
Yeah, I think that's it's important. If you think about it, that I relate it to myself, because when I was in G Capital, Vendor Financial Services, I was the quality leader. My boss was Dan Henson. I used to get up 8 a.m., 9 a.m. I should land up there, and all my problems and questions and answers could be solved with my physical workspace. If I had a problem, I could go to Dan. If I had something with my team, I'd just walk down to the next floor and tell them. Now, sometimes I'm at my home office and I have to look and see what's happening in operations in India. So the way I think about it is one-to-many communication, and one-to-one we do. I think human beings do one-to-one communication really well. But I think one-to-many communication is what I really urge people to do. Are you reaching out? And if you're a leader of a team which you don't see, how do you lead through voice? How do you lead through phone? Reaching out to them, connecting with them, calling them, doing videos with them. It's really important.
And continually reframing their understanding, because you're speaking to people from several cultures
Absolutely.
at one time.
Yeah.
It makes you think much smarter and much better
Yeah.
about how to penetrate.
You know, just talking about it, you got me thinking on that culture point. Genpact works in 27 countries. I think there's 70 centers, 40 languages. And think about it. When you have a customer problem, you will have people from China, Romania, US, UK, India on a call to solve a customer problem. Now, think about the beauty around that. Just absolutely amazing. But then you start saying, hey, they think differently, we think differently, he thinks differently. The common glue is a customer at Genpact. I think we are completely maniacal about customers. And it's amazing how a rallying cry on a customer can get all the people around the globe to think around the customer. And I think that's one of the things that I always think about. That's the beauty about Genpact, that we rally around the customer. We think from the customer's lens. Customer means everything for us, and employees, because the only two things that we have. So I think reaching out, staying connected, visible leadership through one-to-many communication, video, voice, and email are important. Obviously, you don't want just to email for the sake of email, because then it becomes
Yes.
a bigger
Yeah.
problem.
Yes.
A bigger problem. But I think those are things that are really important for us. Being with customers is the best thing. It really is.
Or as Tiger calls it, a maniacal focus on.
Yeah, that's right. That's the word I use. Absolutely maniacal. Absolutely maniacal. I'll tell you this. I'm forgetting the customer's name, and I shouldn't even mention it. But in 2007, the customer actually told us that, I don't think so I can work with you guys because you're too customer focused. He says, we won't be able to respond to you because we are too slow. And I said, I've never heard that. That's just so crazy. But that's who we are. We love our customers. And I'll tell you how much we love them. We have an annual meeting. We party hard. We call them and we party together. In our board meetings, the customers join us. You know, we've also been talked about as one of the most open companies.
Very open.
We share what we do well. We share what we don't do well with all our customers. So the customers love us for that. They party with us. They work hard with us. They give us feedback.
Truly partner.
Yeah, and that's what a true partner is.
Yeah.
A true partner is really that. We make mistakes. We make big mistakes. But the way we fight, we own up, we work with a customer, I think is very refreshing. Obviously, we don't get it right every time. But I think that culture, the DNA of the customer is fantastic. And it's nothing different from G Capital, so it's easy for you all people.
Well, Monty, I think this is going to help a lot of people understand Genpact a lot better. And we really thank you for your time this afternoon. We sit here with you for another hour because you're a great storyteller, but I know you have to get on to another meeting.
No, thank you so much, and trust me, it's a great place, and we'll look forward to working with many of you. Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.